Dun dun dun.
What, the Jimmy Doane Show?
That's it.
Are we here once again on what is today, Wednesday?
It is Wednesday, 4 o'clock-ish.
4 o'clock-ish, right? The 5th of September, 2018.
That's right. Happy birthday, Jack Rhodes, yesterday.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Our old Jack Rhodes. Yeah, we got a bunch of his on the old Jimmy Doane Show podcasts.
That's right.
A lot of those. So we're here every Wednesday and Sunday.
Yep, at 4 o'clock live on YouTube at the Jimmy Doane channel. Tune in at any time and check us out. Please. Today is, well, you just said that.
I did. Got that.
Okay.
Right, here we are. Okay, good. And we got rid of that big old ugly chair, so I'm sitting here in a nice office.
Green chair.
Yeah, a green chair, yeah, which is kind of, and my fish is swimming, right? Mm-hmm. So, because it's green, I didn't think about it. You said solid color. This is pretty solid.
Mostly so.
Okay. So anyway, what's the news? Well, the big news, I guess. Two pieces of news, which one we're going to talk about. One is, of course, the Colin Kaepernick or whatever it is. His.
Oh yes.
Yes,
Nike.
That's right. So Nike has done that, but the really big, and then Trump, of course, has taken him to task on that.
Well, of course.
But the other one, of course, is the hearings.
Yes.
The judge, soon to be, without a doubt, going to be confirmed whether you like it or not. But
so which one do you want to tackle first?
Well, actually, what I'm going to do is
tackle.
Tackle, right? Yeah. What I'm going to do is the first thing I would do, just to get this out of the way. I've called this thing up. I forget where it came from, but it says a UN scientific paper says capitalism has to die in order for the planet to be saved. Now, one thing that's interesting is when the humans are gone, the planet will be here just fine.
Yeah.
The planet's going to be saved no matter what.
Yeah.
It's going to be the planet for another 4 billion years, whether you like it or not, whether we're anybody, no matter what. So anyway, but I love this. It says the post-Keynesian analysis is historical in nature. Now, I don't know what post-Keynesian means, and I don't know what historical means. Markets would not and do not exist without political regulation. This is the UN, okay? We fund the UN. You know, we actually pay, our capitalist dollars pay for the UN.
At its core, it's a gifty thing. Of course they're going to come out with this type of analysis.
The post-Keynesian approach is not a priori wary of the state's role in the market. It does not assume that markets always seek equilibrium, but maintains instead that capitalist economies tend to generate market bubbles and other crises.
I hate it when they make just, the paper into an actor, this tenant does not assume blah blah blah. What do you mean this tenant does not assume? The tenant doesn't assume anything. It's some person.
Yeah.
They're just post-market Keynesianism does not assume a. What do you mean? It doesn't assume anything.
Well, of course, one of the things you have to ask yourself is what was pre-market?
Yeah, it's just
the markets have always existed. As with civilization came markets, whether you like it or not, whether it was bartering or everything, and then the markets. So anyway, it says in view of the challenges encountered today in implementing meaningful international agreements, the most likely option for initiating transitions to sustainability would be for a group of progressive states to take the lead. This would require economic thinking that enables large public investment programs on the one hand and strong regulation and environmental caps on the other. I mean, it just is stunning to me that this comes out from the UN and they don't understand capitalism. It's such a simple concept. I mean, the simplest concept of capitalism is this. You have capital, which is savings, basically, and then you've got and the savings enable you to produce stuff. That you invest the savings.
Yeah, well, the defining characteristic of capitalism is ownership,
right,
by the person who has the capital.
Right.
We do what it is. It defines ownership. 9/10 of our laws are there to decide who owns what. That's capitalism.
Right.
And it basically just says you're born with you. And you can trade you, meaning your hours,
right,
for whatever you can get for it.
Right.
And so go for that, do that, and then you can keep what you get.
Right.
That's capitalism at its core. But when someone conceives of a state of capitalism. They're mixing ideologies there.
Right.
Capitalism is an economic form. It is not a political form.
Right.
And
right.
so what they're crossing the streams there.
Oh, totally.
And the concept is gets all messed up. Capitalism gets all messed up when you start talking about a state because you empower some one or group to interfere with the capitalism.
Right, exactly.
And disrupt the capitalism
right.
and control the resources.
Yeah, the capitalism in its essence is, of course, is the voluntary trade.
Yeah.
Basically, between two people. What do you need a third person in there, especially the one with a gun that says, no, you're not
But
doing
this
it
is
right.
as old, look, until governments collapse, and it may happen in my lifetime or sometime, depending on how long they can extend life here.
Yeah, right.
Because we're going to get to the part that we're no longer ruled by the thugs. And people already are sort of in that mindset. If you were to ask someone on the street, are you free? They'd be like, oh yeah, I'm free. I can do whatever I want. But they don't realize they're free-range humans, basically. A portion of your productivity is sloughed off for the kings. A huge amount.
Huge amount, yeah.
But that's the point, is that it's getting to be unsustainable. The serfs are getting restless at this point.
Well, what's interesting, of course, is no matter how much you give them, they want more, and that's why we're $21 trillion in debt.
Well, and also because that group continually grows.
Right.
Everybody wants to get into the group that gets to take stuff from the other people without having to do anything.
As Willie Sutton says, why do you rob banks? Well, that's where the money is.
That's it. So this. Go ahead.
What's interesting is that here's the UN. Okay, these are the smartest people on the planet, right? And they decided that the government they didn't call it interference. They said reasonably strong regulation, because the government is a very important guiding force in how the economy is organized.
Yes,
Unbelievable.
the UN is by its very nature a government.
Right.
That is to say, it is a collective group of powers and authorities that comes out of nowhere that is seated by its member groups. So of course it loves the concept of power and force, and it's going to profit.
And they got a lot of it. I mean, what's interesting is if you happen to be a UN employee, diplomat, whatever it is, you got free parking. Anywhere.
Oh man, I'm
you got no tickets.
Diplomatic community.
Diplomatic community.
There's all kinds of perks and benefits, but at the end of the day, it's just a boondoggle.
Yeah, it is. And of course, what's interesting is that once as they say, there's nothing so permanent as a temporary government program. I don't know whether this was expected to be temporary or not, but it's grown like Topsy, and it just has everything. So anyway, okay, we can. And I don't have any notes on this, but I will just from memory. We're going to talk a little bit about the hearings that are ongoing now, 24/7. I think it's on C-SPAN. On who?
Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh, right? What's interesting is the protesters that showed up day one. They lined up 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever and steamed in there, and they started hollering and screaming. Chuck Grassley, I think, is the and what's his name? Ben Shapiro, on his talked about this extensively yesterday about what could or couldn't happen, what should have happened actually. But I mean, there were like 70 of them, I think, anywhere from 20 to 70 of them that were physically carried out of there, screaming and hollering to shut it down, and they were, this guy is the worst on the planet, and what it was is these. Linda Sarsour, who is a commie person, she was head of a lot of this stuff, started off with the screaming and disrupted the hearings. And of course, Grassley was trying to calm everything down. What he should have done, as Ben Shapiro said, he should have just said, we're going to call for a vote right now. Because majority of there's 1 or 2 more Republicans on that committee, and they could have voted out into the Senate that point, and that would have been it. No more hearings. But instead, they're going to have this kabuki for another couple of month or so, where the grandstander and the Cory Bookers and the other people like this are starting to run for the presidency in over 2 years, and they're going to get up there and grandstand their brains out about how they this, that, and the other, and of course all of this, and of course during the first hours of the hearings and everything, I guess. The judge, kind of has he has managed to go through the maze of the questions and not answering them, basically, because they're trying to, obviously, are you going to repeal Roe v. Wade? I mean, I want to know now, are you going to repeal? Well, of course, you know, he says, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. But at least they get to ask the question.
I know. But it's just, but it's so funny because that's what this is all about. You understand? Here, these guys have what, 50, 60, 70 decisions each year.
Right.
So what's fascinating about this is that there's this one.
Yeah. And I would say that they shouldn't worry about it, except that these days we know that the courts below, that there are groups who have these cases teed up and ready to go.
Okay.
They've got people already picked out, defendants and prosecutors already halfway through the court process.
Okay.
And they're just waiting to get the proper mix of Supreme Court justices for them to file the appeals to try to affect the law. It's become kind of a battleground for people to get into because of people's ability to do exactly that. So it's more of a battleground than it used to be. It used to be, who the heck cares?
Right.
You're never gonna.
Oh yeah.
You know, they're gonna rule on whatever they're gonna rule on, and now the other half of that, and I think still totally applies, which is you never know who you're gonna get.
Right.
When you're talking about judges, simply because a judge's campaigning, if you will, consists of complete denials,
right,
and avoidance of commitment on any level,
right,
which is the complete opposite, of course, of a candidate who is there to say, you know, I'm going to build a wall, I'm going to do this, you know, and tells you exactly what you want to hear. The judge does the exact opposite. So,
not only that, they, as we have seen, they can turn.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. We have very little information about the judges for the most part.
Well, you know, what happened was at least one of the Democrats on the committee was all upset, even though it's one woman, she's already said she's going to vote against him. I made up my mind, I'm going to vote against him. Oh, but by the way, they just delivered the documents, and I need to read these documents to make up my mind. I'm going, whoa, wait, you already made up your mind. I mean, well, you don't need any documents.
Well, it's all just tactics.
I know, but it's just funny.
They moved to adjourn. They called point of order and stuff. I mean, it was this like you said, it was kabuki theater on the highest level. This was Robert's Rules of Order, whatever. And Shapiro was right. Grassley should have just said, okay, we're going to vote.
Well, yeah,
go ahead.
I'm calling for a vote right now.
That's it. If you guys don't, you know, forget it.
Yeah.
You're not gonna play fair, then neither are we, or whatever. It's fair. It's all fair.
Well, then of course, it has to go. Then it goes to the Senate, of course.
Right.
Which is another, you know, back and forth. I mean, there's more kabuki going on in the Senate, the full Senate, but they still have a majority, and they could call for a vote in the Senate. And you know, he could be on the. He could be first Monday in October there.
And you gotta think that some of the senators understand what's going on here. They're going to play the kabuki theater just right to play the person on the edge who really cares about the theater.
Yeah.
And just to get their one vote.
Well, I love what somebody said. One of the death-defying things is to stand between you and what's his name? Cuomo? Is it Cuomo? It's Schumer and a microphone or a television camera. You don't want to be in the way because he's going to be there. That's, you know, something that you're going to be laying on the floor as he dashes over there. And he's in. It's funny because whenever you see a picture of anybody, just about, he's there in the background every time. It's just him and, you know, Nancy and all that kind of stuff. Okay, well, at any rate, that is ongoing, and I guess I don't know if we're going to talk any more about it because, as we say, it's just theater, and it's all been kind of planned out, and there's the usual, the hollering on this side and this, that, and the other, and I haven't even watched it. It's on. I think it's on C-SPAN. You know. What's
the point? Like you say, it's not
a foregone conclusion, and what do they think they're going to do? I don't know. So everybody's staked out there.
Well, like you said, they're going to run for president.
Yeah, that's right, and they're starting now. Can you imagine? It's over 2 years before the election.
Well, that's about right.
And that's about right. You know, it's interesting because in England, when they call for an election, they have like a month or two. That's it. You know, no.
Or did they not know when it's coming or something?
No, they don't know because what I think that they have some set times, but the majority leader or whoever it is can call for an election anytime. You remember what's her name did that and lost her butt because she thought she could. She already had a majority on. I don't know whether it was on Brexit or whatever it was. This is a couple of years ago, and she called for an election and actually lost seats. But it was a snap election. and you can do that anytime. And you've got like a month or 60 days or something to do your campaigning. That's it. So you don't know. At any rate, this is another thing. Our socialist in the Congress, or our Democrat socialist, Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders unveiled legislation on Wednesday targeting pay and working conditions at big companies like Amazon after the pair traded jabs in blog posts last week. This is called, this is what I love this, called the, quote, Stop Bad Employers by Zeroing Out Subsidies, unquote, Act, or other, AKA the Stop Bezos Act. The bill would impose a 10% welfare tax on large employers equal to the amount that their workers receive in public assistance benefits in an effort to encourage companies to raise wages. I mean, this is unbelievable to me. I mean, they make the fact that they've got these benefit programs, food stamps and all this stuff to begin with, and so now what they're going to do, instead of eliminating that completely and having the employees go out on their own and say, well, I can't live without food stamps, but there are no more food stamps. So now you have to go out and get a living wage or whatever you're going to do. But no, you still get your food stamps, but we're going to tax you, extra 100% of the company on that. So it's talk about the shell game. I mean, this is really, it's hysterical. I love this. We give large employees, and of course, large employees are 500 or more. So what's interesting to me is the independent Vermont senator cited research of the University of California, Berkeley Labor Center. Of course, Berkeley is like, Commie West or something, which found low wages end up costing the taxpayers exactly $52.8 billion per year to fund federal assistance programs. Not 152.7, and not 152.
Well, they rounded it up to 100 million. That's
right. That's true. That's true.
A fair amount.
They probably could. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, for the purpose of the bill, large employers are defined as those with more than 500 workers, including independent contractors and franchise workers. So that includes your Domino's delivery guy or your Uber driver or anybody like that. So that's, in other words, if they're if they're on food stamps and, I don't know how they're going to tax, like independent, they're contractors. I mean, how are you going to work on that? It's, so anyway, they go through and everybody has their own statistics and their own data. And of course, Bernie comes along on the what do you call it, when you envy. We have one person whose wealth is increasing by $250 million every single day, while he pays thousands of his workers wages that are so low that they are forced to go on food stamps, Medicaid, and subsidized housing. So that's what the senator. He goes on and quotes some other stuff. But I mean, what's fascinating to me is Bernie. How does he think this is going to work?
They think, and I just had a big conversation with someone on Twitter about this, they think that they can just tell Bezos, you have to pay these people $25-30 an hour, and that he's just going to go, okay, I'll take a big pay cut then, and I'll just pay him more because...
You saw where, of course, what one of the things that brought this out was that as of yesterday, Amazon became the second company to be worth over $1 trillion after Apple.
Right. So that's what tips them off. Is they say, look, Bezos is making tons of cash. He can obviously afford to take a pay cut. So you just give all those workers raises. You just force him to adjust his entire economic plan because...
Never mind, of course, the untold thousands, if not millions, of customers who are going to see their shipping rates go up and their prices.
No. See, you're assuming that Bezos is going to change anything else about his company. Now, see what he's going to do, according to the socialists, is what he's going to do is he's going to take a personal pay cut.
Right.
Okay. He's going to give those workers the money. The money's going to come out of his paycheck and go to the workers. No increase in costs anywhere else. No decrease in revenue. Nothing.
He's going to start eating hamburger instead of steak.
Well, no. He still gets millions and millions of dollars, but he's just not going to pay himself the maximum. He's just going to readjust it because that's what the law will be.
Right.
And so, and what you would do is, if you were a real democratic socialist, what you do is you would pass the law so that it only affects Bezos. Because
right. Well, that's what they call it. That's what's it's AKA the Stop Bezos Act.
Right. It's and what you do is you just define the companies that it affects as I don't know, companies with over $1 trillion market cap.
Right. Right. Or yeah, headquartered in Seattle and.
That's right, headquartered in Seattle. The CEO's name starts with a B.
Right.
That's right. Just randomly, I'm just gonna throw it out there, and yeah, I mean that's what they want to do, and it makes perfect sense to them because as far as they're concerned, Bezos is winning, and he's winning so much that it's just okay to take from him.
Well, what's fascinating about this is they don't see that they are the monopoly. They have the guns. They are the ones that can force this supposedly monopolistic company to do their bidding, and I mean,
yeah, but they're benevolent government people who aren't there to make a profit. They're there just to do the good.
Right.
They're there just to do the good. So what you do is you take the government and you force whenever
force. Of course, this is the whole thing
with guns. Sure. Right. What you do is anytime a company gets really really rich, then you just go in.
Bad. You penalize, of course, that.
Well, they're still in their yachts. It's just not as big of a yacht or something. And so they look, they didn't build it.
Right.
And so you just take their stuff and you do good with it. I mean, it makes perfect sense. Look, it's just straight out of Plato's Republic.
Yeah. Which wasn't a republic.
Well, no. I mean, it at the end of the book, it deteriorates into a full dictatorship.
Right.
I mean, but that's basically you can look at. I don't think Plato really knew this, but from my
he was the first,
Well, yeah, but I mean, from my perspective, he was actually trying to write a book about a republic, and it just in the final analysis, when you look at it, you're like, oh. A dictatorship. Yeah. I mean,
it's the philosopher kings.
Well, that's what I mean.
That was the thing.
And you have to suppress the media and the artists, and there's various groups you have to control and keep jailed and things like that. But all in all, if your leaders are benevolent, it always works out.
Right.
What they don't ever see is what happens when a non-benevolent person gets a hold of that same power.
Right.
And what's amazing to me is that they don't imagine, they're sitting there thinking to themselves, we want Bernie to be able to do this. But they're not understanding that right now, Trump is in power.
Yeah.
If you were to enact this type of a thing, so let's say you just put it out there and you said, the president is going to be able to designate companies which fall into this category. And they're thinking of Bernie being able to do this. Well, and then all of a sudden it's Trump being able to do this. It's what happens when your opponent, when somebody who you don't think is benevolent gets a hold of the same power.
Let me just tell you, this is exactly what is happening with the Kavanaugh thing. You have to understand that it was Harry Reid.
Right.
Who put in place the nuclear option, whereas instead of 60 votes, you could get it with a simple majority, and in order to shovel their guy through. Now, guess what? It's coming back to haunt them, and they're all upset.
And it's the same thing with you're seeing now with the censorship calls. First, it was so we got to censor Alex Jones, that crazy white right-wing crazy person.
Yeah.
Okay, and now Trump is coming in and saying, and it was fake news. The left was crying fake news about stuff like climate denial or whatever.
Yeah.
Now it's President Trump. He's all over it. Fake news is like his big thing. It's fake news, and now they're like, oh, wait a minute, we didn't mean that, our news.
Yeah.
And then the same thing. It's with Trump and what's the other issue? I was just saying.
The climate thing, of course, is one.
Yeah, but the other thing. Oh, the censorship thing. Now he's coming out and saying that it's wrong for Google and Yahoo and Facebook, Twitter to censor people, and so he wants to regulate them. Well, who do you think's going to make the regulations?
Right.
It's going to be him.
Right.
And so it's just if you start to enable anybody, an authority to just designate companies to go after, what do we think of the government as just like a luck equalizing unit? It's just something that if other people start to win too well, the government goes in and just takes some of their stuff and gives it to the people who just happen to lose. I mean, is that...
Well, they are in the business of picking winners and losers.
Well, I know, but I mean, that's what I'm asking is that the universe that we want to live in, where
some people don't mind if they're the ones in power.
Well, nobody minds while they're the ones in power. Nobody minds while they're the one, and I guess maybe that's the argument for that type of a structure. That way, whether your guys, the problem is, of course, if the people with all the money also get all the power, and of course that's what happens because the poor people and the people who are nice and kind and generous and want to think, look, we're going to use the government as this prohibition against the rich people, and
the great equalizer.
Well, that's what I mean. And what they don't often see, or not readily apparent, is that the rich people have the resources to control that government.
That's called lobbyists.
That's what I mean.
That's what they do. They the amount of money that is spent on lobbyists is mind-boggling.
Right.
I mean, all with K Street, these people, these lobbyists, they make millions.
So who do you think ultimately gets a hold of the power?
Right.
And that's why the best structure, from my perspective, is one of limited power, and then you let...
It's supposed to be. I mean, that was the whole idea of the Constitution, and of course they've just run roughshod over it. So it's a shame. I mean, they've little bits and pieces. I mean, look at we can talk about that some other time.
Yeah.
One of the great books that a person ought to read is called the Dirty Dozen, and it was the dozen of the worst Supreme Court.
Yeah, some of them weren't so bad though, but there were definitely like 8 or 9 of them, and they were. Whew.
We talked about this on one of our previous things. Yeah. Okay. Now, what's interesting, of course, to dovetail on this with the hearings, is Netflix's upcoming documentary "Reversing Roe" shows just how much is at stake in America's abortion battle. Now, apparently, in about 2 weeks or a week or two, maybe 10 days, 13th, I think, of September, Netflix is going to have a documentary, air quotes, on exactly what is going to happen if Roe v. Wade is reversed. A trailer for the documentary released Tuesday shows the long-fought battle between advocates for and against abortion, from second-wave feminist marches to the religious right and the onslaught of attacks on abortion clinics. Reversing Roe, quote unquote, promises to show the history of the tumultuous abortion battle. The documentary is set to air on Netflix on 13th. It's the basis of democracy that you control your own body, feminist activist Gloria Steinem says in the clip now. And of course, one of the things that is interesting is control your own body. That applies to everybody. I mean, well,
that's the basis of capitalism as well.
Right, is you own yourself. Who owns you? You own yourself. And once it's not that you can't temporarily trade your body to some corporation for remuneration or something like that. But the fact is, the idea is you own your own body. And of course, I guess it's going to be interesting to see that this is is being released in the heart of these hearings of the judge. And so, of course, what they're panic-stricken is the one thing out of, I don't know, how old is he? He's in his 40s? Early 50s? Kavanaugh?
Yeah, it must be in his mid-50s, I think.
Okay, whatever. But, I mean, he could be on there as...
Yeah, for 30 years.
30 years, right. And on that time, he's going to be able to rule on, hundreds. And this is the one thing that everybody's panicky about.
Well, it's a huge deal. It was a big issue that the courts took control over, and that therefore they're not afraid to go back over that. Also, that particular court ruling is wonky. I mean, it is...
Is that right?
Oh my God. It is a Frankenstein of a freaking court opinion that just pulls stuff out of...
Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, exactly. And it pulls stuff out of the air. I mean, you get done with that and you're like, what? It absolutely does not read like any other United States Supreme Court case out there.
Okay.
And so it's due to be revisited at some point.
Okay.
It is not what you would call a streamlined opinion or anything that.
Well, of course, the question is, let's assume for the moment. I don't want to get too into the weeds on this, but let's say that they overturn it.
Right.
Then what?
Well,
no more abortions?
Well, no. The big issue comes down to whether or not the states can control whether or not people can have abortions in there. And what the what the free choice people are panic-stricken about is that there will be a national rule which says no abortions. And then you got to leave the freaking country to have an abortion. And that's really the nightmare scenario for their side. And if it just went back to the states, I'm sure there would be a third or two-thirds of the states which would allow abortions to go forward.
Of course, it's one of those things, one of the problems you've got is some of the states, what they do is they make it pretty hard.
Exactly.
They license the abortion clinics, and they're 400 miles apart, and blah, blah, blah.
And who wants to be driving to another state anyway to get, it would be a huge mess. And we're talking about a large number. I think it's, I want to say it's like 200,000 procedures a year or something. It's large.
It's every bit of that, yeah, for sure.
And that's a huge number. That's 4 times in our.
Well, what they're saying here, of course, is that immediately there will be a sale on coat hangers and back alley abortions.
Well, it could be ugly, but I don't see them going back on that in any huge way. I could see them punting to the states, but. Well, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, we will. Of course, one of the things then of course what does happen, this is one of the reasons for all this stuff, is that the pro-life people start to bomb and kill people. I mean, literally, they resort to violence.
Yeah, the pro-life people start killing people.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, the abortion doctors, they stand out front. Seriously, I know. This is
well, but
this doctor has been responsible for untold number of deaths, so we're going to kill it.
That's right.
So.
Well, there's crazy people everywhere, and this is a religious issue. I mean,
that's right. Oh yeah,
big, yeah. So.
Well, it'll be fascinating to see, as you say. It's probably already teed up.
Yeah.
All over the place, and we're going to find out. But the simple fact is that he's going to get confirmed. End of story. That's the whole deal. And I thought some of these things were kind of interesting based on this clip. 1 in 4 women will get an abortion in their lifetime. Who came up with that? 25% of females? That's a lot. I mean, I just, if many advocates fear that if this procedure becomes illegal, women will be forced to back alley abortions as they did pre-Roe. I mean, it's just I don't know. So anyway, in the session there was a lot of screaming and hollering going on, and the other people that were there, the LGBTQXYZ people were there, voting rights and more. Let's see, the Shauna Thomas, the executive director and co-founder of the women's advocacy group Ultraviolet. Should be Ultraviolent. No, Ultraviolet tells the cut, whoever that is, that when she first entered the hearing room with 22 other members of the public, she felt like she was walking in a funeral procession. Of course, it took about 8 nanoseconds for Muslim activist Linda Sarsour to become the first protester to get up and calling for them to adjourn the meeting. So this is interesting. So.
Like you said, we'll see. That's all just political theater right there.
Yeah. Now, did we talk about Nike?
No.
Okay. I thought this was U.S., and this was kind of interesting. U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday criticized Nike Incorporated for its new advertising campaign featuring Colin Kaepernick, the NFL quarterback, or reserve quarterback, or almost quarterback, who sparked controversy by kneeling in protest during the national anthem. And of course, this was another thing that I think that Shapiro had, or if it wasn't Shapiro, it might have been the Dilbert guy. What's his name? Scott Adams. I forget. I love his posts too. He's on Periscope at least once a day. So anyway, said what happened is a lot of people have decided. Well, let me put it this way: what we saw were people that were cutting their socks with the Nike swoop, cutting the swoop out of their socks and wearing that way as a protest. And of course, it's interesting because Nike has doubled down on this basically, and said, you know, we're with this guy.
I think it's so much fun. It's like the troll is trolling the trolling, trolling each other, and everybody is trolling. And Nike is making a fortune. Well, they've lost a couple of percents of market share, but you got to figure there was a big sell-off right then, because now, of course, if you wear, you know, like I'm sure people will see this and they'll be like, oh, well, you must be in support of Kaepernick. Well, no, it's just the only hat I have.
Yeah, right.
But
it's ubiquitous. I mean, you think about all the football teams, the college football teams.
Well, just everywhere.
Tennis, everything.
It's everywhere. I mean, it's on 1/3 of every piece of sporting equipment out there.
Yeah.
It's some ridiculously huge percentage. But hey, man, I think it's great for them. Nike's they're doubling down. They're taking it all the way. Any publicity is good publicity. Let's go for it. Why not? You know, take a chance. Worst that happens is there's a huge blowback. They have to fire the guy, make a big apology, and they're still in the news.
And they're still right, exactly. Yeah, right. What's the worst that could happen? We decided to lift our sponsorship on this guy.
That's right. I mean, talking about the free advertising, man. Their name has been in print everywhere for like 4 days.
In the backwoods of China.
Yeah, seriously.
Where the stuff's made.
Right. Well, that's the other super ironic thing is all the social justice warriors supporting Kaepernick doing this are pushing money into the Nike coffers. I mean, that's this with their sweatshops and everything.
So anyway, Trump has embraced the issue as a political cause. Of course, this is stupid. Frequently criticizing players for taking a knee at games and questioning their patriotism.
Man, they popped the cork when the president tweeted on this one.
Yeah.
Down at Nike, they were like, oh, and the crowd goes wild. Home run ball. Come on, bust it out.
Yeah, that's it.
The president.
No.
Shoot, man. I would have every person in the company, I would be like, look, today's assignment is join Twitter. Follow the president. And when he tweets about Colin or Nike, respond in some way.
Yeah, right.
Try to poke the bear.
That's it.
Say anything you can to, don't worry, you'll still have your jobs. It doesn't matter what you say.
That's it. No, it is really, I mean, and you talk about this. I was reading some of Thomas Sowell's quotes the other day, and one of them was, had to do, and we've talked about this before, the meme du jour is just all over the place until tomorrow, when there's a new one. And this will go away here pretty quick, and, the whole deal. Okay, I got one last thing, and then you can get on what I thought this was kind of interesting. Scientists, this is fascinating, believe that the Earth could experience the big freeze as the sun goes through as what's known as a solar minimum. During this time, sunspots are minimal, and the globe and the Earth could be in for a wicked cold snap. Now, what's interesting is this. Of course, this is climate change. Guess what? Unfortunately, it's different from what is before. We had a mini cold spell for a couple hundred years in the 16, 15, 14, 15, 16,
the little ice age.
The little ice age, right. And it could happen again. What's interesting, as a ham radio operator, I can tell you that one of the things that I experienced was the sunspot maximum. It's every 11 years in 1957. And boy, as a ham radio operator, you could hang a wet string out the window and talk to Japan because of the number of sunspots. And the ionosphere was just totally electrified. Well, we've had lower and lower maximums every 11 years, and we're coming up for another, quote, maximum, which could be equivalent to a minimum, 40, 50 years ago. And with no sunspots, of course, could be a rather dramatic change. And as far as ham radio is concerned, it's still, you don't get to have the long wave skips and everything that we had back in the 50s and 60s. But so that's how I know about it. But what's interesting is the scientists are reporting that the sun has been free of sunspots for a total of 133 no sunspots for 133 days this year, with only 241 days in 2018 passing. This means that the sun has been blank basically for a majority of the year. And the solar minimum has returned, bringing extra cosmic rays, long-lasting holes in the sun's atmosphere, and strangely pink auroras. the sun, of course we talked about this, the sun follows roughly 11 years where it reaches a solar maximum and then a solar minimum. Anyway, so during the solar maximum, the sun gives off more heat and solar particles are littered with sunspots. So at any rate, the prolonged solar minimum could mean another mini ice age. The last time this prolonged solar minimum did in fact lead to a mini ice age, which was scientifically known as the Maunder minimum. That little cold snap lasted 70 years between 1645 and 1715. Yeah, okay. So what's interesting is that they're talking that this could happen again. Well, I'm wondering about of course, you talk about the climate change deniers, and you kind of wonder if all of a sudden things start to get colder, as the climate people in the 70s, mid 70s were claiming that we're going to, Earth was going to freeze and there could be no more food, and millions and billions of people are going to die. Well, of course, it never happened, and so I think it's just kind of interesting that now we have another study. Experts, whatever it is, saying that now we're in for a cold snap. So who do you believe?
Yeah, to me, I'm gonna wait and see what the evidence shows in terms of.
Well, you're lucky because you're young enough to be able to wait and see. I mean, I'm going to be gone.
The data points. You never know. They could inject you with the nanobots or anything.
That's true. Yeah, we talked about that last time. The nanobots are repairing my body, which what I'd like them to do, obviously, is to make my lungs believe that actually the lungs are part of my body and I don't have to.
Yeah, a little gene therapy.
Yeah, because I'm coming up on my 5-year anniversary of my lung transplant.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, well, 5 years is 5 years that I wouldn't have had, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
So that's...
Well, yeah, I don't think they know much, if anything, about the sun's activity relative to the Earth's climate. I think it's...
They've done a lot of studies on it. Of course, we now have a new satellite that I think is going to orbit the sun.
It's going to land on it.
Yeah, right. No, they're going to have. They're going to have the one that's going to pass right within a couple of million miles of its corona or something, and it's supposed to be a deep space examination of the sun. So that'll be.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm holding my breath for the climate change. Yeah, the only thing. It's mostly stable. When you look back, it's thousands and thousands of years of stability, and then there'll be something like 12,000 years ago was the Younger Dryas period when suddenly a 5-degree shift and change or something.
Well, you think about it, until 10,000 years ago, it was only about 10 or 12,000 years ago that there was glaciers in northern America.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, like I said, the Milankovitch cycles with the 100,000-year rotation seems to be still in effect, and so I'm figuring we're going to get warmer here for a while, and it'll be incremental.
Actually, it hadn't been too bad this summer here. Here in Florida. I mean, normally this time of the year we're at 96 degrees during the day. Today it was 88, 89 is the top. So.
Big old typhoon slammed into Japan.
Yes. Ooh, killed people too.
Yeah, it looked bad.
It looked bad, yeah. And we're supposed to have a hurricane going to slam into Pensacola area.
Yep.
That's going to be, they're talking about a pretty major up there in Alabama. Okay. Yeah, if you're up there in the Mobile area, you better head for higher ground.
That's where Tim is.
Yeah. So. All right, well anyway, that's what I've had. You got anything in particular?
Let me just double check here and see if I have anything. Oh. I thought I'd mention this. This is kind of funny. So at the Kavanaugh hearing, did you notice the girl sitting behind Kavanaugh?
No.
So there's a cute girl sitting behind Kavanaugh, and it appears as though you can just see a sliver of her, but you can see kind of the whole sliver all the way down to. She's got her hand on her knee, and she seems to be given the OK sign.
Okay.
What? So the OK sign you'll recognize as the OK sign.
Okay.
If you know sign language, you'll also recognize it as the letter F from the alphabet.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And also, it is that's the signal to them that this guy is white and that he's on your side. He's the white power guy. So people are hot on her.
Well, of course, I love the part where it was one of the things that one of my funny comedians, Louis Black, talked about his father, who's in his 90s, he bought his father a big, huge monster screen, you know, with all the super OLED and everything like that. And her father's a bit of a, you know, I don't know what now I can see her cleavage, you know, that kind of stuff. And you know, did you see that? She knows she winked at me. You know, that kind of stuff. And people read, yeah, I see, she loves me. She winked, I saw her wink at me. So, you know, if we're talking about Sarah Palin or something like that, I forget what, but it was.
See what you want to see.
That's it.
So another real quick thing, I saw that there was an AP headline that said, Trump's rollback of pollution regulations to hit coal country hard. And I thought, well, I better read this to see if there's some bad things going on. I read it. Everybody in the article was appreciative of the rollback.
Okay.
And was saying what we really need here are jobs and people in Washington to stay the hell out of our business. And there's no problem with the air quality.
Okay.
Even it was like, okay, where'd you get that headline from?
Yeah, I've seen a couple like that too, where the headlines, we've always talked about this before, you always have to read to the end of the article. Right. To find out what really is going on. And so often you look at, especially on Yahoo for some reason, headline is clickbait stuff.
Yeah. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has declared that satire online is a punishable offense.
Really?
Yes. So, watch out.
Watch out. I guess you don't, yeah. I mean, boy, can you imagine satire? I mean, it's like they're like Sheldon, you know, Sheldon who in Big Bang Theory, who doesn't understand satire.
Yeah.
And you know,
hopefully they don't understand it then.
Yeah, right. That's the only thing, right? No, that's not satire. Okay, then you meant it.
That's right. Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's pretty much all I have. I meant to get into the ethanol thing. Sorry, Stitch.
Did he send you some stuff about ethanol?
He sent a little story about it. I meant to review it and I did review the last mile information concerning telecommunications that we talked about last week.
Okay.
But still can't figure it out exactly.
Okay.
It was exactly what we thought it was, which is the final leg, final leg. But
all right. Well, we've had some fun.
Yeah, that's all I got for today, ladies.
We'll be back Sunday at 4 o'clock.
Yes, we will. And so join us.
Now, how bad was our?
Looks like we dropped some. Oh, yeah. And so I will upload a new copy. Looks like we dropped 10%, and then we just started a new stream, which is going great.
Yeah, just as we're ending.
Right. So I think we had dropped about 10% before, so I'll upload a nice new copy for everybody if you give me an hour or so. So thank you for tuning in.